What's going on, everybody? How's it hanging? How's it happening? You guys know who it is. This is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast. But to Mr. D Rocks or Rock and Metal Thrive. Happy Thursday, everybody. It is February 18th, and we're going all the way to South Florida for this episode. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I always say these episodes are incredible. That's because they are, and this one is the exact same way. I got to talk with the lead singer from the band Top Tier. His name is Chris. And we went into a whole bunch of stuff for just a fantastic and fun conversation, talking about how pop punk is making a comeback, about how we miss live shows, just that connection there, how they end up constructing their music, and of course, how they are making their waves in the Miami scene today and how different Miami is in comparison to the rest of Florida and to the rest of the United States as well in terms of just having rock and metal come out of there. And it's definitely something that's very insightful. You are going to want to listen to this one the whole entire way through. Trust me on this. This is one of my favorite episodes of all time. Hell, when Riot Fest comes back in 2021, and if Chris is going to be there, find us, because Chris and I are going to be in that mosh pit going absolutely bonkers. Are you guys ready? Because you better be. So let's go. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast, our guys over at Am Splitter PR keep sending us all these great bands, and this one, man, I'm glad our guy Tim sent us over this one, because I got to take a listen to music right away, and I'm like, let's see what comes up here, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh my god, I'm reveling in pop punk glory right here. So, all the way from Miami, Florida, please welcome Chris from the band Top Tier. So, Chris, welcome to the Chord Progression Podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me, and happy to be part of it.
How's it going over there in good old Miami, Florida right now?
We're getting along. It's a glorious day of filming this January 20th. There's a lot of changes going on in the world as we know it, but we're taking it one day at a time. Miami is having one of its cool days. Honestly, it gets cold here once, every 3 months. And spoken like a true Miamian, I've never seen snow in my entire life, so I'm out here kind of complaining at this 60-degree weather.
I was just about to ask how cold it is out there, because when I woke up today to go to work, walked outside, looked at my car, had to scrape off all the ice on it. It was a very balmy 11 degrees Fahrenheit outside.
Can't relate. I don't even think my freezer is 11 degrees, man.
Your freezer's got to be somewhere probably, I think a base freezer temperature is 0, maybe -1, -2 Fahrenheit.
Well, I'll say the closest thing to snow I've seen is that frost in the back of my freezer. So I'm going to close my eyes and dream and just accumulate enough of it one day.
Well, once touring resumes and you guys get back on the road, come up here in the winter. You can experience all the great things about being a touring band in winter. You get to experience the snow, potentially getting stuck out on the side of the road, having to change a tire in a blizzard. The possibilities are endless. Trying to load and unload in freezing temperatures. As long as you don't have to do it during that polar vortex time where all of a sudden it'll be it gets down to -20 degrees is the high. Yeah, that's always fun.
Kevin, I'm going to put it this way. It's been so long since we played a show that I actually miss busting my ass trying to carry my bass cab up and down a flight of stairs and barely make it in time to sound check. I miss driving north in Florida for 5 or 6 hours in one direction and still being stuck in Florida. I'm so detached, man. We got to get back to this normality.
We definitely have to, especially from, I brought this up many times as a fan standpoint too, because that's where I'm coming from. And it's something where, I had so many tickets to so many shows for 2020. I still have the ticket stub somewhere because a couple of them are just totally postponed and just haven't had a new date set out yet. Some have been canceled, and I'm starting to use those tickets as bookmarks when I'm reading, just because it's hey, it's the perfect size for it. Plus, it's kind of a weird remembrance of a show that I could have gone to. Hell, I've got one in a book I'm reading right now. It was the tour that had Hollywood Undead, Bad Wolves, Fire from the Gods, and From Ashes to New. And when I had Lance from Ashes to New on the podcast, I'm yeah, I'm using your ticket stub as a bookmark now.
Oh, hold on to that. Hey, look, I'm on the same boat, man. I was gonna go see My Chemical Romance. They were going to be stopping at at the Sunrise Center, which is about a half hour north of me. And it was first oh, we're going to postpone it. It's fine. And then they say, wait a few months. And then they're it's going to be next year. And I'm just here hoping to God that I get to see him, man. This has been 13 years in the making, 14 years. I don't want to be let down.
Me either. And I might end up missing it too, because my plan was to go to when they're going to be playing in Chicago, because they're going to be playing at Riot Fest. And I went to I went to Riot Fest in 2019. I had an absolute blast, and I was just waiting for the lineup to come out because I needed to know if I needed to get me just a one-day ticket for that Saturday when My Chemical Romance was going to be there, or if I need to get the whole 3-day thing. And it was all based upon one factor, and that factor was if and when Rise Against was going to play, because I wanted to go see them again so damn bad. Even though I've seen them 9 times, I'm like, I need to go 10th.
Man, Rise Against was actually one of the first bands I saw in concert. They were touring with Messengers, A Day to Remember. I mean, it wasn't my first show, but it was like one of my fondest early concerts I can remember. But yeah, Day to Remember had just dropped. What do you call it?
Homesick.
Homesick, I think. Yeah, they just dropped it around there. I'd never heard of Messengers. It was a great opening act. That was the first time I discovered one of those touch magic Coke soda machines where you can like mix 10,000 different flavors. Oh man, I absolutely love Rise Against. Joe Principe, I think that's how you say his name. He's like hands down one of my favorite bass players on the face of this planet.
It's fun watching him too because every time I watch him play bass, he's never really. I see a lot of bassists when they play. A lot of them are either like stagnant or in that like power stance every step of the way. When I'm watching Joe, it's just a lot more of a fluid motion. However, that I'm usually watching Joe like last out of the 4 guys, and the reason is because I'm usually in a mosh pit going absolutely nuts because that's what I do. Otherwise, I'm watching what Tim's doing up there because Tim's always giving a lot of energy. I'm watching what Zach's doing because Zach is like a maniac up on stage, always bouncing around. Or I'm trying to watch Brandon figuring out how his arms and legs are going that fast.
Man, I gotta say, like they've been going at it, what, like 20-ish years now, bro. It's like they age like a fine wine.
They really do. They really do because even the last time I saw them was 2019 at Riot Fest, and I even saw them earlier that year because that's when they did a 5-show run for the Ghost Note Symphonies album, and they did 1 show in Chicago at the Chicago Theater. And I went to that, and it was just both shows completely different style. I mean, you get one in acoustic, more intimate setting in a theater. The other is in Douglas Park. They're on stage at a festival, and everyone's already kind of converging there because on the stage right next to him was going to be the headliner for that night, which was the final Slayer show anyone was going to see in that area. So everyone was already around there, and I could have gone over to get a better spot for Slayer, but I was so dedicated. I'm in Rise Against. I'm in the pit right now. I'm so close. I am not moving from this. There's no way. And
you're already within guitar pick and drumstick throwing distance. You can't throw that off.
There got to be a point where it was because it was so hot and humid that day. People were passing out. We were picking them up and we were throwing them crowd surfs out to the front just so that they could get medical help. It was actually something that worked out really well because no one was getting through that crowd. It was so packed, but we were just okay, how can we get them medical help? Put them up, send them forward.
Let security take care of that. That's pretty smart, man.
But I also had one where when the pit finally opened up, all of a sudden, this about 2 songs left in the set, there was this woman about 21, 22 years old working for, it was at the Tribune or the Chicago Sun-Times. And she was there trying to get some pictures of Rise Against, but because she wasn't very tall, she couldn't really see over the crowd. So I'm like, I got you covered. Put her on my shoulders. I think it was for all of Prayer of the Refugee. And I'm just okay, get your pictures. And she's like, do you mind? I'm like, nope. This is actually giving me the much needed break from the pit before we end the show. And they ended it with Give It All. So of course, everyone's flying all over the place. I'm pretty sure I did a flip over a kid when I got hit one point. I did land the flip though. It was freaking awesome.
Fuck it. Oh man. I'm on that same boat, man. I'm not the biggest guy. So I don't know, part of me kind of misses feeling like a sardine and being covered in 10,000 people's different sweat. I'm so detached from shows. I'll take it all. I can't tell you the last time I paid $20 for a beer, and I almost missed that.
I do too. Bud Light. I do too. I miss all of a sudden, hey, we're going to go get some beer. All of a sudden, okay, I get a round of beer, 4 beers, okay, $42. I'm like, ooh. That first one's going to taste so damn good. That second one would be okay, fuck this. I don't want to pay this money.
But we're getting there, man. Soon enough. People wear the damn mask, get your vaccines going and kickstart shows.
And that pretty much, it's people ask me, it's well, why do you want to get the vaccine? I want to go back to concerts again. I have had people come up to me oh, you just want to have it first. I'm well, think about this. I want to get vaccine so I can go back to going to all these shows and being back in mosh pits, which means everything's opened back up. The music industry is going again. The entertainment industry is going again. And these musicians are finally back on the road doing what they love.
Exactly.
I'm maybe not saying it, the way that it's the nicest way to say it or like the perfect way to say it. However, where I'm going with it is like, yeah, if I can go back to concerts, that means the music industry is open back up again and bands are back on stage.
Exactly. And like, I mean, granted, we are in a pandemic, but I don't really feel like there's been enough light shined on how like venues have been affected by this. You know, they within the first 4 months, I would say, of the outbreak breaking down here in Miami. I mean, everything's already overinflated as is. So like rent costs are like super high. And like our, beloved local venues, Space Mountain, literally it's like a bodega store that just got converted into a venue. We had Open Stage Club, which is in a kind of nicer part of Coral Gables near like University of Miami. That went out the window. And, it's just like people forget like these venues sustain themselves by having acts coming in left and right. So, and then it hurts from top to bottom. If artists aren't playing, then you don't have vendors. They can't come out and, make their sales, like the staff that works for the venues. And it's like, and grants only go so far. So, everyone's hurting differently, not to belittle anyone else's grievances or hurting from it. But, like artists are dying to get back out there, man. Like we can sit here all day and I love chatting and I love the fact that artists have been able to utilize the power of the internet with live streaming and hell, TikTok blew up. Artists are getting a stage on there, but nothing's going to change the experience of, dapping up your friend at a show and, standing in line and waiting for the local act to come up. It's just, we're all itching to get back in there.
Oh God, yeah. And I mean, we can go so deep into that, but I remember when, so back when the the second round of stimulus stuff came out at the end of December, and they're like, hey, we put in the stuff for Save Our Stages. It's $15 billion for all these stages. And a lot of people were like, yeah, this is great. I'm like, well, let's take a look at it in two ways. One, is it good that they're finally giving these venues that have not been able to make any money since March some relief? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I am not discounting that. However, where I'm absolutely pissed at this is we knew that they were going to be the first places to shut down and the last places to open back up due to the nature of the beast. So why weren't they helped out a lot earlier?
Yeah. And hey, fingers crossed for that rest of that $1,400 or $2,000 coming in.
Well, because I was gonna say, because like, and there's other venues too where it's like smaller venues have had to shut down. There are some venues where they're able to do a couple of other different things in order to bring in some sort of revenue. Of course, not gonna be bringing in the same amount of revenue that they had been. Like here in Milwaukee, I mean, my favorite venue, the Rave, it's at an old, the building was originally an Eagles club that was built back in the 20s, and it's haunted. Wow. So because someone died in the old pool, and there's a janitor that died down there. So for Halloween, what they ended up doing was they ended up doing like a whole haunted house thing where they turned off all the lights, they gave you a flashlight, and you just got to explore. And it wasn't, I'll put it this way, it wasn't cheap to go through there. However, I'm like, this is a chance for me to go back to my, like the place that I love going to help support them. And then maybe I can actually find the haunted pool. I'm in. Let's go.
Yeah, no, we had some venues up here do that too. Our one of our hotspots here in Miami, it's called Churchill's Pub. Which is like our equivalent to like the CBGB. It's just like our punk rock venue where if you've used their bathroom, you've essentially survived every virus to ever hit mankind. There's just something about the stench of that place that's home. But no, realistically, they converted part of the property into like a flea market kind of deal. So, props to venues that are able to utilize their space and, make something out of it. Our label Apocalypse Records was able to get access with another band signed to us and able to use a spot for a music video. But, like venues have to get creative to stay afloat, and it's just kind of like what you said, it's great that they're getting their relief, but like who's left to get it,
Yeah, it was something where it's like for the relief, it should have been given a lot earlier, and then venues could have continued to be innovative and creative in order to maintain that level of survivalness following that stimulus or that benefit going on. So because then we could have had so many more venues still open up, and all of a sudden they had the time to come up with some creative things so that when live shows return, hopefully in 2021, because I'm starting to see certain things where different festival promotions, I saw one today or that they were shooting this, that they said everything for 2021 right now is still a go. Things can change, however, they are fully planned on doing everything for 2021, but I don't think their festivals that they really run start until August. However, that's still a good sign that, there's venues, there's people out there like, hey, we're playing on shows in 2021. So it does give a lot of hope. And on the podcast I did just before yours, I kind of said somewhere, I think we're past the halfway point from when it's like the shutdown happened to basically being back to being able to go to live shows and play live music, because now with the vaccine out and with many of the first responders having availability of that vaccine and starting to see that vaccine going to the second stage, going to those that are highly susceptible to it or to the elderly, those over 65. Got to take a shot at my mom on that one because I mean, it's like, it's nice that she's getting it, but it also means she's old. So Mom, if you're listening to this,
my parents are in that same boat. I'm telling them like, yo, y'all are old enough to get this. Like, what are you waiting for? But yeah, even one of our bigger venues here in South Florida in Sunrise, it's the BB&T Center where My Chemical Romance was going to play. They were already starting to promote shows at a limited capacity. Mind you, it's a little easier for like arena style like venues to kind of, accommodate, because you can easily spread people out. I feel like we're going to start seeing a bigger rise of like outdoor shows. Similar to how we have drive-in theaters where you have like your own little segmented area to kind of just stand out and enjoy the show. But we're in like the Wild West right now of like shows again. We got to do what we got to do to get by.
It's definitely gonna be interesting to see what happens when live shows return as well. And it's something that I've talked about, I've taken a look at as well in my own mind. And it's something where, okay, when they're able to come back, bands have been just sitting on material for, again, over a year at this point and not been able to play for over a year. So all of a sudden when it comes back, everybody's going to want to get back on their own. Everyone's going to want to tour. Everyone's going to want to get that stage time. And it's going to be interesting to see not only how much stage time each band gets, but also who gets what stage time, because with certain venues that have closed down, like I've said this in more of an economic term, supply of stages has gone down for sure because of this. And the time that you can get on that stage is definitely limited then as well, but the demand has risen as well. So my biggest concern on that front is, are bands that are really working to come up in the scene right now going to end up potentially getting shut out a little bit due to basically from venues trying to make the most amount of money back as possible with bigger acts on their stages? I mean, I understand that that's the case. However, I hope to God that there's a way where bands that are really starting to come up in the scene as well are not going to be overtaken all the time by those bands that are able to throw their weight around or have the record labels behind them that can throw their weight around in order to get them on live shows.
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way. That's true. But yeah, venues technically have the leverage to charge a premium if they really wanted. And granted, they're all struggling. On the flip side, I think about like, we have this big pool of bands that are like that are going to be ready to come back sitting on material. Just imagine the packages that are going to be put together by like booking agencies. We're probably going to see crossovers with bands we never thought we'd be seeing play. And then we have bands that are just kind of coming up, like there's a lot of artists that that are still sitting on their 10-year, their 15, 20-year anniversary, like tours or something that are, like God knows what can happen.
Yeah. Cause I know, who was it? We Came as Romans was still sitting on their 10-year like anniversary of To Plant a Seed, but I'm not sure how that's going to end up going anymore if they're going to do that. Kind of coming through that whole entire, you're going to see bands and artists that necessarily don't really make much sense to play together. One good example of that would be in 2020, Deftones was supposed to go on tour to really promote Ohms right before it came out, and they're gonna have Poppy open for them.
Really?
Yeah, and
it's a crossover.
And I had a ticket to go see that. However, I kept that ticket because they said, "Yeah, we have to reschedule it." So they just basically took everything they had and just pushed it back to 2021. Like basically the day and time is almost the exact same. They just were like, okay, we're just going to push it all the way back.
Yeah. I mean, the people are already there. It's just a matter of if and when the shows happen. But that's Poppy. You know what? It's 2021. Anything goes.
And because of that show, because of doing that, I'm like, I've never listened to Poppy before. I made a whole entire video that it's basically helped me spawn a series on our YouTube channel called the Kevin Figures Out series, where I go and look at bands or artists that have some kind of connection with rock and metal, whether it's a deeper connection or something like that, like Poppy, where it's like pop, but also forays into more rock and metal stuff, and just basically listen to music and figure out, from my personal standpoint, do I like them or not? And when it came to Poppy, I was like, there's certain things of her music I just can't get into. However, as time has gone on with like different releases, she's starting to get more of that rock and metal sense, and I'm starting to get into it. So I'm definitely more curious to see how this plays out. So when it comes to going to see Deftones and Poppy in 2021, I'm more interested now in seeing Poppy than I was when I first got that ticket.
Yeah, and like we also got to think about, like what's classified as rock nowadays. Like I say rock music so loosely because we can put anything on the spectrum that's remotely alternative into rock music. Like we're seeing the likes of like Machine Gun Kelly just came out with a pop punk album. Avril Lavigne is making a comeback. Like I don't know what year this is. Mod Sun is putting out something really cool. They're collabing with this producer John Feldman, Goldfinger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's doing a project. It's John Feldman's producing something with MGK, Avril Lavigne, and Mod Sun all on the same on the same song.
Holy shit, I hope it does have some sort of ska influence in there as well, because Goldfinger makes some damn good ska music, and if they just able to put that in there, especially kind of like MGK, Avril Lavigne, mix it all into one, you get something potentially really fantastic. And even with pop music, I kind of want to ask you this question as well. When it comes to pop music, especially what you saw in 2020, again, you saw MGK make that pop punk album. We've seen other things as well happen where on that album with the song Forget Me Too, you had Halsey on it as well, just as a feature. And following that, she talked about how she wants to make a potential pop punk album, but she wants to make sure that if she's feeling that, she's not forcing it. You saw Youngblood on a Bring Me the Horizon track. You also saw Miley Cyrus during the Save Our Stages Fest cover Zombie by the Cranberries and then want to do a Metallica cover album. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing a lot more of these pop artists and hip hop artists kind of start foraying a little bit more into rock and roll because they also listen to this stuff as well when they were growing up, so they're inspired by it. But do you see potentially more of these pop artists and hip hop artists potentially coming into rock and metal with some influences? And along with that, do you see their fans kind of having a more crossover in terms of some of these younger fans and younger generation that really primarily focus on more pop and hip hop music, starting to venture more into rock music, more pop punk, maybe some more Bring Me the Horizon stuff, maybe something harder than that? Who the hell knows? But do you see something like that happening? Because in my opinion, I sure do.
Yeah, I think what it also comes down to, like, I'll use MGK for an example. Like the album he just came out, I didn't listen to it top to bottom, but the songs I did listen to me, it sounded like this is a man who grew up listening to alternative early 2000s music and wants to put his own twist on it. And, everything does come in waves, but like I've noticed, especially like in 2020 going into 2021, we have this like mini like emo revival. And I say revival, but it's like we're always going to like, Paramore is never going to go out of style. Fall Out Boy is never going to go out of style. My Chemical Romance. And you see a lot of the younger generation starting to discover this side of music. And then we have, people our age, I grew up listening to this music, want to give it a shot. So you have not only like the young heads that are just getting into it, but you have an older audience who can say, well, this kind of reminds me of something I listened to growing up in college or growing up in high school or whatever. So that's why I think I personally feel very optimistic about at least what Top Tier is going to be putting out, because when I look at our Spotify demographics, like we do have bigger, younger fan base. Like I would say, we have a decent amount of like the 18 to 22 demographic, but I have just as many 23 to like 32-ish year old people. So I feel like this is such a great time for rock music because we're going to have artists, just like you said, doing a lot of experimentation, trying to bring stuff out. And like living in Miami, Florida, rock music just isn't the flavor of the month here. It's a lot of EDM, a lot of Hispanic music. So just seeing that from the geographic armpit of America, that is Miami, Florida. We're so detached from the rest of the world. I'm in a whole country, a separate country here. But seeing these artists kind of experiment with their sounds really makes me optimistic of like what rock music has in store. It's not going to be as much of an underground thing as it has been these past like 5 to 7 years.
Totally understandable. And then a couple of things before I segue into your music on that, because I think especially when you brought up Top Tier, we can definitely segue into that and have a perfect like transition. First things first is when it comes to that MGK style where it's his own take on a pop punk track. Yes, there was a lot of Blink-182 influence in there, but that's because honestly, Travis Barker helped them construct most of those songs as well. So you're definitely going to get that in there. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just pointing it out as fact. Second is, I think the best way to describe MGK's influences, go back to like 2009, 2010, walk into a Hot Topic, look at the t-shirt wall, and there it is. That's all the influences.
If there's one thing 2021 I hope brings, is that I want bands to go back to making graphic tees that have like monsters and stuff all over them. Like Evil Attack Data, remember, they look like slime monsters melting all over the place. I lived for that, and I probably still have some of those shirts gathering dust in my closet.
So I don't have any of those. I have a bunch of like 30 Seconds to Mars one, Rise Against ones, and probably more Ice Nine Kill shirts than I can imagine right now. I probably at like 13 or 14. It's like every month, all of a sudden, okay, here comes another one. But I love the horror trope all behind it. I mean, the last one I got was there was like a Nightmare Before Christmas inspired one where it was like a rugby shirt that was purple and black, and it had the not like the Roman numeral 9, their logo on the like right in the right, like in front, and the back it had just Ice 9 Kills. However, the paint or the ink on the lettering is glow in the dark.
Oh, that's dope.
So I'm like, you got to be kidding me! And I was like, I wasn't gonna get it. All of a sudden, they're like, yeah, here's 20% off. Okay, fuck it, now I'm getting it.
Man, I splurged so hard with online shopping, man. Like every store is feeling it in some way, shape, or form. Those Retail Me Not is like one of the first like websites that pop up on my browser from how much I'm shopping on there. But yeah, hot topic. If you have any reps listening, we got to bring back those monster shirts ASAP.
Oh yeah, we do, and it's something where then all of a sudden, like when I do the whole entire browser thing, like you did, one of the first things to come up with is hot topic, because right now outside of all like the business stuff, like anything for merch, the one that is like saved on there is inkmerch.com. So that's Ice 9 Kills for everybody. Yeah, I'm always on there. But then when we were talking about the music demographic stuff, it's definitely something where, especially with where you guys are musically with more of that pop punk flavor, and with what happened with MGK, and you're starting to see some other artists really kind of bring back some of that more pop punk emo flavor, especially with influences from Fall Out Boy, Blink-182, Paramore, My Chemical Romance as well. You're starting to see that younger demographic kind of break into that sound and break into, becoming bigger fans of that sound and really understanding it. Where you're coming from, living in Miami, yes, you definitely are in your own little corner of the country due to the fact that Miami's a different demographic. It definitely has a bigger Hispanic and Cuban population as well, so you're definitely going to get some more of that Latin-inspired music. That's just that's just based on demographics. Also, with it being more of that party destination, you're definitely going to get whatever is very popular in the club scenes. That's going to be a lot of EDM music and hip-hop music. However, I know if you go further north in Florida, you're definitely going to get some of that harder stuff, because Florida's its own animal, where you're going to get, bands like A Day to Remember, Under Oath that came out of there. So I've been down there before. The scene is ridiculous. Or if you go along the eastern seaboard, especially northeast, scene's ridiculous. Come over here to the Midwest. Shit, this was back in November of 2019. This is when I saw Ice 9 Kills for the first time. There was 3 shows at the rave that night. Ice 9 Kills was in the basement. And there was an alternative artist in the club level, and there was a pop artist up in the ballroom, because the ballroom's going to hold the most, then the club level, then the basement's going to be at most maybe 500 people. However, the basement was just jam-packed. We were all packed in there like sardines. It was nuts. And if it was something where they would have moved them up to the club level had there not been an act there. 2 weeks before that actually did happen, because Motionless in White was supposed to play in the basement with After the Burial, but they sold the demand for tickets was so much that they had to move up to the club level, and they couldn't do it again and move up to the ballroom due to the fact that they had someone up there, because they sold the club level as well.
Man, well, he's talking about that. I believe, that Motionless in White After the Burial, that tour came here to Miami, which kind of was like, that came out of left field, because I can't imagine, like, there aren't that many, like, metal bands that'll travel down here to Miami. They might travel to Fort Lauderdale, because that's kind of just, like, not too far off the cutoff of, like, Broward and West Palm. And any Floridian listeners can tell me, or if any Miami listeners listening on here, they can all agree. The second you pass West Palm Beach, you're already in a whole separate country. Even Broward County, you're in a whole separate country. But whatever, I digress. That Motionless in White show was played at a nightclub called The Hangar, which it's predominantly Hispanic music. But I welcome anytime artists do want to take the time to travel down to South Florida. Like, I joke about saying we're the geographic armpit, but it's like, you have it lucky out in Milwaukee, where if you travel 4 or 5 hours in any direction, you're hitting a state or two. Here, it's just like, that's why most bands will usually stop at the center of the state around Orlando or more north, because, you can afford to travel out and know your next show is going to be like packed with people. But
totally understandable. Especially like
talking about Miami, I hope we can be the first pop punk band to cross over with Pitbull. My boy Pitbull, if you're listening, Dale, top tier Pitbull collab 2021.
That would actually, I think, with your guys' sound as well, especially with more of the revival of pop punk, thanks to guys like MGK within the younger scene, and with Pitbull always kind of having that pop flavor to him as well, so he's always going to be somewhat relevant in there, especially because he's always doing something. That's definitely collaboration that would absolutely work no matter what, with given the demographics of your fan base and given the demographics of Pitbull's fan base, along with the demographics that are really coming into pop punk as well. So that could be something that would be just massive for you guys.
Man, I'm young and optimistic. Anything says and goes here.
But like, because what you're saying, like, with bands, especially being in Milwaukee for myself, yeah, if for me to go to shows, I know for bands, for me, like if a band's gonna go on a massive tour, I know at the very worst, I'm only gonna have to travel an hour and a half to go see that show. Because either they're gonna come to Milwaukee, which means I get to drive 7 minutes away from my house to go see the show. If for some reason they're gonna go to a smaller venue, and they're gonna go somewhere in our state capital, Madison, Wisconsin, I can get there in a little bit over an hour, no big deal. And there's one venue I always like to go there. It's literally in the basement of an office building, but it's a cool venue because they have where everyone is like together, like just watching the show kind of in the pit. There's no seats or anything. There's a balcony setting, but for the pit, like it's actually dug more into the ground. So then the bars are elevated above it and their bars are all around. So it's just, if you want to watch show chill by the bar, yeah, you're going to see it above the crowd. But if you want to be in the crowd, you're going to have to get down a little bit more into this pit, and it's awesome. Or if like some bigger bands come around, yeah, they're probably not going to stop, like some really massive tours. They might not stop in Milwaukee or Madison. They're probably going to stop in Chicago for sure, and that's an hour and a half for me, so that's no big deal. However, I have gone 4.5 hours west, gone to Minneapolis to see Beartooth I Prevail in A Day to Remember. Totally worth it, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same case for us. Anytime, like, well, even when I saw that show where I saw A Day to Remember, whereas against they played at the University of Central Florida, which is like, again, right like near Orlando. That was like a 4-hour drive for me. I mean, I'm not complaining, you know, like at the end of the day, like if I get to see the artist I want to see, I love it. But, you know, it would be nice if bands decided to take more of a risk in coming down here. Because, like, I can definitely say that despite the fact that Miami's not known as like any hotspot for rock music, we've developed such like a great like local music scene, at least, you know, pre-pandemic. Like there's a lot of like camaraderie like down here, you know, like a lot of the venues or most of like bands played down here were very like DIY shows. You know, you go to someone's house or you know, we happen to be friends with someone who owns a restaurant. It's like this local place called the Fish House. And a couple of years back, the owner of the place said, "Hey, yeah, we have this like a storage space next door that they used to use as a gift shop. And you know, to make a long story short, they let us have access to it." And I think that is what really drove me to want to pursue music even harder. It's the fact that like if you can like help be part of something and create something from nothing, and with the help of all the bands we've like networked with along the way, like it goes to show that like there's always going to be a demand, and if you like put in the time and effort to create your community, you know, people will flock out.
That's definitely true as well. Not only that, but when you're working with so many other bands in conjunction with yourself to kind of create that scene, everyone's going to end up pushing everybody else to do everything with a much better quality. They're going to want to get you the best out of you as possible. And it's not going to be like, oh, we want you to be on our level. No, they want you to achieve greatness. They want to have you achieve your goals, because then it's going to put even more relevance into that local scene, because that's where you guys came out of. I mean, again, take a look at that. I say, take a look at the Central Florida scene, where you take a look at it. I mean, people know it for just great, more like metalcore music, because again, bands like A Day to Remember, bands like Under Oath, that's where they came out of.
So when Andrew Wade records out of there.
Exactly. So you're looking at it thinking, holy crap, this is definitely a hotbed. For me personally, like if I'm thinking about a hotbed for like the music I love, I'm looking 90 miles south of me, going to Chicago, because again, that's where Rise Against is from. My favorite band from grade or middle school, the band that really started getting me really into more modern rock and metal music, was based out of Chicago, and that was Disturbed. And then Chevelle's also out of there. The pop punk band Belmont's from Chicago, and I love them. So I'm like,
I adore Belmont. We'll go on that tangent later, but
that's a different tangent.
Everything they drop is a work of art, and they're bringing back like the easy core genre as a whole, and I love it so much. But you're absolutely right, man. I was planning on going out to Riot Fest with my girlfriend before all this broke out, but that's one city I definitely do want to have an opportunity to play. I don't care what venue we play, but everything I've heard out of there, you know, bands that have had toured down here like that from the local shows that we threw told me that it's just like there's such a love for music, you know, and I think that's what just constitutes every good scene, you know, kind of what you're saying, how just like groups of people that uplift one another, you know, like the fact that you can like play to your closest friends and knowing that like those friends want to bring their friends to come out to a show, and it's just like trickle down effect, and it's when it's done right, it's so beautiful. And I get sentimental thinking about like all the fun we had setting up like all these shows ourselves. So like we're here now. Granted we're working with a label, but that DIY spirit is in all of us is never going to die.
Oh, and that DIY spirit should never die as well, because again, that's going to always make you guys have a different connection to your music as well, and the whole performance process due to the fact that you're the ones that are putting it together. One other thing too is if you do end up going to Riot Fest, let me know, because I will definitely end up being there at some point. And if you end up playing in Chicago, you will definitely let me know when you guys are playing and where you guys are playing, because you're definitely going to see my crazy face, and also probably end up getting busted up in a mosh pit somewhere. You'll see that happen.
Hey, you want to put me on your shoulders to see a band? Like I'm all for it.
No, I mean I can definitely make that happen. Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we'll talk about it over $20 beers.
I think that when I was there in 2019, I think they're about $10 a piece, depending upon where you got them. So, plus, I mean, when it comes to finding beer at venues that for like their like festivals that aren't going to be as pricey, I kind of got like a sixth sense for that. I mean, I grew up around beer my whole entire life. I've developed this. It's really weird.
Yeah, man. Well, just the one of many things we miss from shows. Don't mind me. I'm just picking up my Red Bull can a million times. I probably should not be drinking Red Bull at 9:00 at night, but whatever. I'm an adult.
Yeah, you're an adult. You can make your own adult decisions. Trust me, I've got that. Like, I won't drink caffeine just because, like, if I did that, you'll start, like, especially Red Bull, you'd start seeing my hand go like this. If I drank one at like, let's say like 9:00 in the morning, it'd be now like, because here my time it's almost 8:00 when we're recording this, because I'm an hour behind you, so my hand would still be like this, and I wouldn't be able to fall asleep.
If you want a caffeine fix, like a good kick in the balls, I need you to go to your local grocery store. You're probably gonna find it in like the ethnic section because it's not as like probably readily available up there. But get your hands on Cuban coffee. You might see it might be called pilon, it might be called la llave. They're gonna come in these bricks, right? It's just like the purest espresso you can think of. And over here in Miami, it's a very big cultural thing that you get these little things called coladas, right? It's a tiny little styrofoam cup, maybe about 4 or 5 ounces in it. And then they put these tiny little plastic shot glasses on it. And I mean, we do it at my job. I work management at a van store down here. But it's like every shift we'll come in with our colada, and we're out here pouring our little drinks, and it's just like a big social gathering, kind of. It's a cultural thing down here. But that is like they say the reason why meth never took off in Miami was because of Cuban coffee. It's no joke, man. Like I know this is a podcast and all, but like I have a tattoo of a Cuban coffee cup on my forearm here, and I feel like it radiates every time I take a shot of coffee.
Oh my God. I actually have heard about how crazy Cuban coffee can be from a little stand-up routine from Gabriel Iglesias, aka Fluffy, because he was talking about how, like, I think if either he was in Cuba or he was in Miami and like ordered a Cuban coffee, and they gave him this like that like 4 to 5 ounce cup, and he wanted like a 12 ounce like mug, because I mean that's what normally you'd expect when you're in America. That's normally what you end up getting, or you get like the 20 ounce ones.
Extra large.
Yeah, so all of a sudden he drinks it, and they're like, "Did you drink that whole thing?" Yeah, in about like 2-3 minutes. Okay, we're definitely have to call an ambulance for you, because you were definitely OD'd on caffeine.
Bro, there are moments where like I feel like I have an out of body experience if I drink way too much coffee, because like I love it because some of the associates at my store, they'll just casually come in every day like, "Hey Chris, I got a colada," it's like I'm here, I'm touched, I'm like, "Oh, thank you guys," like a teacher getting an apple. In the back of my head, I'm like, God, I'm gonna be in friggin' rehab if I keep drinking this shit. Like I'll just, after like 3 or 4 shots, like I'm vibrating, I'm out here smelling colors and freaking looking at sounds and stuff.
All right,
so yeah, get your hands on it.
All right, so I definitely know when it comes time for when live show, I'll put this one, consent for live shows come back, especially music festivals, because I want to go to Riot Fest this year. If Riot Fest is going on, but like I can't travel because my plan is to travel over to Europe around that time as well, just because there's a lot of bands over there that I've connected with that I want to see live. Plus, I want to go back over there so bad. I was going to plan to do it 2020, but of course it happened. However, there's a couple other festivals I'm trying to go to, some in Wisconsin, some in Ohio as well, just to see what happens. But I know, especially with all the energy I'm going to have to put in there, I might necessarily need that, that like swift kick in the balls in terms of caffeine wise. I think I got my little idea right there.
Take it from a true Miamian. You say it'll be the best thing ever. It's funny, like there's been instances where like we had this one band called I Fight Fail. They're a band from Indiana, traveling to Miami for their first time, right? And when we were playing at the Fish House, they also had like a little like coffee maker, and like show's over, we're breaking out payments and stuff, and I'm like, wait, before you guys drive up, try this. And there were about like 7 or 8 people in there, like the van that they had in there. They all took one shot, and as they were like driving off, you can see the shocks on the car like shaking from how much they're jumping. Look, I can go on and on about coffee. It's such a cultural thing down here that like, how I wish we can share one right here, right now.
I wish we could too. However, we would be up pretty much the whole entire night at that point as well. Hey, Riot Fest early in the morning. That'll be a good idea.
Hell yeah, bro. Trust. I'll get your contact information. We'll make it happen.
Oh,
I don't care if I got smuggled on the plane.
Oh, definitely. And then all of a sudden, what you'll end up seeing happen is all of a sudden, be later in the night, right before MCR goes on stage, maybe Rise Against will be playing. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, where the hell is Kevin? It's like he hasn't calmed down in like 8-9 hours. He's still going strong. And then all of a sudden, you're gonna see the like 275 pound. You're gonna see that 275-pound guy in the mosh pit, and all of a sudden, you're gonna see him just get flung somewhere else. And who the hell did that? You're gonna see me at 6'1", 185 going.
Hey, but look, I still hold it true. I love starting circle pits. I love knowing I have the power to make pits happen. And there was this one time we played a show. I don't know who the hell it was. It was a show at Churchill's, but there was like a pit going where I remember someone being picked up, and they were just like they were being flung around by their arms with a momentum, just like carrying them all over the place. Like that's the energy I live for, man. I like starting the crap. You get me in there, like one hit to the face, and my pretty boy ass is gonna be crying like.
I'll see where I'm a little bit different like that, where it's like starting it. I know there's going to be other people that start it. And even sometimes for me, it's kind of hard to just jump into them. But I always know this in the back of my head where it's, if I jump in there, the first time I get hit, the first time someone hits me, there's going to be this just massive adrenaline rush. It just sets me forward. Even if I get hit in the face, whatever it is, I'm just be like, okay, let's go. Last big concert I saw before COVID really hit was Word Alive, Escape the Fate, and Falling in Reverse. Mm-hmm. And Word Alive went on, and I found my way to the pit, and I was kind of on the edge. I'm just like, okay, I'm just a little bit hesitant to get into the second song. All of a sudden, someone pushes me from behind, and this, like, again, 275-pound guy just whacks me. I fall flat on my back, completely get the wind knocked out of me, like, they pick me up, and they're like, are you okay? I'm just like, just let me catch my breath. Dude, you need help? I'm like, let me catch my breath. And all of a sudden, okay, let's go. I was set the rest of the night. Like, there was nothing that was going to stop me. Even the dude that, like, took an elbow to my face during Popular Monster almost broke my nose, couldn't even stop me. Because after I found out it was okay, someone dragged me to the side. I was like, what the hell are you doing? I'm okay. They're like, no, we saw you take that hit. You're leading the side for the wall of death when Where the Fuck Is Your God Now comes. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. I look at the other side. The guy that hit me with the elbow in the nose was on that side. And I just pointed at him like, I'm coming for you. All he did was he looked right at me and did that like whole entire Morpheus thing where he picked up the hand and just went. And I went after him, absolutely leveled him in the wall of death. Right away after I leveled him, just picked his ass right back up. I'm like, okay, we're good.
See, that's what I love about like the metal community, man. Like you can beat the crap out of each other in the pit and you're bros right afterwards, man. Like
that's, I think the biggest thing that I miss about it the most was just, it's not just the adrenaline rush and just the fun that I have. It's just after every single song, no matter what it is, you could be just getting beat up by a bunch of people. You could just get beaten up by one person, but the end of the song comes and that person is going to shake your hand, give you a high five, hug you. It's going to be a freaking blast. Like they really don't care. Some of the first time I ever jumped into one was at a Rise Against show. And some guy was just like literally just kicking the hell out of me during Savior. And I'm like, oh God, like this is the one way to hell start out a mosh pit career for me. But at the end of it, the dude just like gave me a big old hug. I'm like, okay, I'm good with this. Like
now you're friends with him on Facebook and you happen to scroll through him, see his one post once every 3 months. You're like, wonder how that guy is.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much, yeah. There is a whole, like, it's weird. It's a whole family vibe that ends up happening. And that's not only within metal, like, but rock as well. Because whenever I go see shows, especially at the rave here in Milwaukee, there's like 20 or 30 people I'd see at almost every single one. It was like the concert family that we had.
Of course. Yeah, that's what I missed the most, man. Like, because some, like every scene has their familiars. Those one that you'll always have that one person. Doesn't matter what the hell's going on. They could be having a child, and they're still going to take time to go out to the show.
That would be me. But I don't have a kid. I don't have a kid yet. I'm 26, and don't really have anything else going on outside of like this stuff and my full-time job. So yeah, I'm pretty childless at this point.
Listen, I'm in no rush either. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Like, let me enjoy this music thing first, and I'll bring a little gremlin on the earth later.
Well, hopefully you get to enjoy this music thing for a very long time, and then also bring a little gremlin onto this earth with this music thing. Just marry both of them. Why not?
Man, it's part of me that I have this like paternal thing in me where it's like, it's gonna be great. One day we're gonna have a tour bus, and we're gonna have our kids and our significant others all in on here, and like. I think about that, and then I'm like in the back of my head, I'm like, dude, do I really want to be like changing diapers, like blasted out of my mind after a show?
I'll put it this way: it's like you think about that. However, in your heart, like, because you're talking about like getting into the whole music scene, it was something that you figured out that this is what you really want to do, and if there's a way that you can make it work so that all of a sudden you're doing what you want to do, and you're able to have a family along with that as well, and really have that strong family bond. While being on tour, while being a musician, then that's totally worth it. Then then if that's what your dream is, then you absolutely should go after it. I mean, you've already got one part of that down where you started a band. You definitely got through that local scene where you're picking up in there. And now, especially with being on the label you're on right now, and also being that connection with Ad Splitter PR, they're going to be able to get you so many different places as well to get you exposed in terms of fan interaction, Spotify listeners, because that's always the metric that people go off of nowadays. Just people really getting in touch with your music and having it spread out. And again, like we said earlier, with that revival of pop punk, the beginning, I should say, the other revival, due to with what MGK is doing with different other pop punk artists kind of going back there, along with newer artists kind of taking more into the foray, and different pop artists and hip hop artists kind of dabble in that kind of style. There's definitely going to be a shift of a younger generation from more that hip hop pop kind of sound. They're going to start venturing a little bit more into pop punk. They're going to start listening to stuff that is really classic pop punk. They're going to start listening to Fall Out Boys, the Blink-182s, Newfound Glory, Good Charlotte. And all of a sudden they're going to try and find out something that's a little bit newer so that they can really get into it for themselves. And then that's where you guys are like, hey, we're the new shit. Come listen to us. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're going to be going on a whole countrywide tour, potentially in support of, dare I say, Belmont.
Hey, man, you never know. I'm just going to stop you there for 1 second. We're about to age and date ourselves here. We can call Blink-182, Newfound Glory, Simple Plan, Sum 41. We can call that like classic pop punk now.
I know.
Classic pop punk. Just think about how that rolls off the tongue.
It sounds weird, but again, that's the thing that happens when time goes on. Because again, when we were listening, like for me, when I first actually heard Blink-182, like, I mean, I was probably like 6-7 years old at that point. That's 20 years ago.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. But I'm thinking about how that shit happy I was when I finally bought American Idiot for the first time, and I was in fourth grade, third grade, fourth grade. I was back when I'm on YouTube trying to find like anime music videos and lyric videos of these songs. Like, I really don't feel old. It's really what you feel on the inside.
Yeah, pretty much, because the other fact of the matter, too, is as you take a look at, especially where we are right now, I mean, we're in that mid-20s era. I mean, when it comes down to it, we're definitely in that we're not young in college or in high school anymore. However, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, if you live to be 100, you're only a quarter of the way through this.
Hell yeah, man. I'm trying to get there. I mean, honestly, I have some family members on my dad's side that have lived close into their hundreds. I want those genes, man. I want to be able to, in 2070, be like, listen here, you young whippersnapper. Let me tell you about a band called Green Day. Let me tell you about a band called Belmont as we're like watching their holograms play on our VR televisions.
Oh my God, that'll definitely be like, all right, kids, you ever heard this band called Rise Against? No, Grandpa, we haven't. Grandpa gonna teach you today.
I'm gonna learn you something today. Turn on your grain. We're about to hear some music.
We're about to hear. I'm about to hear some of that good shit, kids. It's gonna happen. this is gonna blow your freaking mind. But when it comes, I mean, if you really think about it too, a lot of people that are really coming up in the music scene right now, and really are kind of those more emerging bands. The bands that we listened to as kids and that are still popular today in some aspects, they're the ones that they were influenced by. Again, MGK. Take a look at what the pop punk album that he created. Again, very influential with Fall Out Boy and Blink 182. So you take a look at it, yeah, and those bands you're thinking about it. Blink 182 came out with a new album in 2019, and Fall Out Boy, after they kind of went a little bit of a different direction, especially with Mania. However, when they came back with My Song's What You Did, or Save Rock and Roll with the song like My Song's What You Did in the Dark, I mean, people, especially that really liked them from their older style, really latched on to something like that. So it definitely still is there. And and I'll put it even this way. When it comes down to like the music that we started listening to, especially myself, I mean, when it started getting any kind of introduction to rock and metal, it was the stuff my dad listened to. So I was listening to a lot of like Van Halen, ZZ Top, Poison, Rush, Electric Light Orchestra. And do I listen to those bands a lot anymore? Well, no, not really, because I've got all the stuff that I like myself. However, do I still find myself from time to time going back and listening to those bands? Hell yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, like even from like an artist perspective, you know, you got to look about like the benchmarks that you got to look at. Like in my shoes right now, I'm thinking about, you know, the still top headlining bands that play this style. And I'll use Blink 182 for example. They're still touring strong. They're still putting out music. They have old and new audiences alike. But like any artist, you do need that young, new, fresh blood at the very least opening for you. You know, like they're big in their own respects, but like you need something to go up to par with you. I love to use Neck Deep as an example. They started out. I remember seeing posts of Ben Barlow literally messaged. He messaged one of our local show bookers saying, "Oh yeah, I'm from this band in the UK. I'd love for you to check us out, this and that." And I see how far they've come. And you know, what started out as like a moderately known pop punk band, all of a sudden it's opening up for Blink 182, and it's like I feel like that's a very attainable thing for like top tier. I mean, I'd love to open for Blink one day, but it's a matter of like any artist should look at like who's the top dog in your genre right now, and what are the bands, who are the artists that are opening for them, because you know they're usually on the right direction in some regard, you know.
Easily.
And about, you know,
and one thing I was going to add to that was you take a look at the bands that are more in that pop punk realm, like the big major bands that were in that pop punk realm again back in like the early mid 2000s. And the three I'm thinking of, again, Blink 182, let's think of Fall Out Boy, let's think of Green Day. Take a look at take a look at those bands, and when they're touring, take a look at how they're touring, where they're not playing like those smaller club shows, they're not playing like the medium size. I mean, Blink 182, they're playing major festivals. Green Day will play arenas and even stadiums. They're supposed to play Lambeau Field in 2020 on that Hella Mega Tour. Fall Out Boy was going to be on that as well. And there was even a follow-up.
I get to that one too, man. Well, no, I almost got tickets. I was let down at Ticketmaster.
Oh.
Last minute.
And then, like, I was going to go with Fall Out Boy as well. I remember I wanted to go to their show in, I think that was 2018, because the lineup was MGK was opening, and then Rise Against, and then Fall Out Boy, and they were playing at Wrigley Field in Chicago.
Damn. That's wild.
I wanted to go to the show, but I had another obligation. And then I'm like, frickin' A. But then I also am like, you know what? I would have loved to go on that show, especially if Rise Against was headlining, because then I could have gotten that longer set. But what you gonna do about it? However, again, where I'm going with this is you're taking a look at the size of these venues that these bands are playing. Yes, they've been around for longer than Top Tier has. However, you're seeing that how prominent they are in the scene today. Now, is pop punk something that could definitely make that revival? I mean, we're seeing it start happening right now, and you guys are basically setting yourselves up perfectly to really take that in stride and potentially become one of those next big bands. Potentially you and guys like Belmont could potentially become that next Blink-182, Fall Out Boy, New Found Glory, New Good Charlotte, New The Story So Far, that kind of stuff.
Of course. And it's still humbling, like now, like when we put out the video for our single Ego Trip, I'm looking through like the Vivo comments, and I'm seeing these comments of like, man, these dudes sound like Yellow Card, these dudes sound like Fall Out Boy. And like, you know, I feel like we're doing something right where we're tapping into this like little nostalgia memory pool of some like listeners, and then we have new kids coming in like discovering us for the first time. It's like there's just so many potential people to reach out to, and like that's why I feel like despite this pandemic happening, this is still the best time period for like this genre of music, or I feel like for alternative music as a whole.
I think so too, just because there's definitely a lot more people that are venturing out into different music because it's a lot of people that are just kind of starting to get tired of listening to the same old stuff as well. I mean, even for myself, I'm always listening to different stuff because of what I do. However, I do have those genres and those bands that I really stick primarily with most of the time. Like I'm always going to listen to punk rock. I'm always listening to Riot Against. I'm always going to listen to metalcore now because I really got into it through this stuff. I've been in a hard rock and more that like Disturbed kind of style as well from earlier on. So I'm going to stick with that. However, there's definitely stuff that I've found and thought about and listened to that I've really gotten into as time has gone on, just due to the fact of me finding out about this stuff, because I always want to find out what's new. I always want to find out what else is out there. Always open to different things, and it doesn't matter what genre it is. Hell, I've interviewed metalcore bands, deathcore bands. I've interviewed just metal bands. I've interviewed hard rock bands. I've interviewed pop punk bands. I've interviewed some alternative bands as well. I've gone all across that spectrum of rock and metal, but I've learned so many great things and found out so many great bands that had I not taken the time to really kind of put myself in that situation, I probably wouldn't have found many of these.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. And then like that, and that's when I really start reminiscing and think about how much I miss Warped Tour, because that was half the experience of it, man. Like when you're not sweating your balls off, trying to find shade between shows, you're passing by the Ernie Ball stage, or you're passing by another smaller tier stage, or the Journey's Left stage, or whatever, that's what I loved about it. I discovered so many bands. I remember discovering Transit and Seaway and Pup. I remember seeing them there for the first time. It's just, I think that's what I also miss about festivals too. It's just like there's so much to consume at once, and there's these little pockets of gems, these really great bands that you just happen to accidentally discover.
Oh, absolutely. And there's one thing that I've been kind of doing just with all the bands I've had in the podcast in the past, year at this point. I keep looking at these festival lineups that are coming out for 2021, or that were out for 2020, but going into 2021 now. And I'm seeing all the bands that are on that aren't like the headliner bands, but like looking towards like the bands that would be on earlier in the day. And I'm looking at those and I'm starting to listen to those because I want to see, hey, who could I potentially get in the podcast? Who could I potentially talk about music and different aspects around the music industry with? And not only that, but like there's a couple where all of a sudden I'm looking, I'm like, hey, I know that band. I've interviewed that band. This one. Like I'm making the connections there. I'm thinking, holy crap. This is the perfect time to go see them live, is to go to those shows and do something like that. And then pull out my whole entire idea of going there in like a RV Winnebago kind of thing. And then telling all these bands that I'm going to be there and I'm going to have a Winnebago full of water, Gatorade, beer, soda.
You're the stupid fan every band wishes they can have, man. You're out here with goodie baskets and crap. Please.
Yeah, and just basically say, hey, guys, come over to the van. Come hang out for like 10, 15 minutes. We'll do like a little quick interview kind of thing. But I've got water, Gatorade, like I got anything you want to drink in the Winnebago. So you can come hang out for a little bit. And then when it comes to seeing the show, I got to maintain my schedule as well, because I want to make sure I get to talk with many bands as possible that I have met in the past or have talked to in the past. However, I also want to see them live too. So I'm going to be constantly bouncing around. That's where that Cuban coffee is going to come into play.
I'm telling you, man, it's a drug. And be like, hey, I got that good over here. Bring out the brick.
Well, the crazy thing too is especially the one that will be happening in Wisconsin, which is Rock Fest, because that happens in Cadott. It's more in the western part of the state. And I've got friends that are going to that. I'm like, I'm getting my own like pass. I'm getting my own like parking space so I can do this. However, it's gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna like all these people are gonna be introduced to all these different bands as well through this. And hell, you never know. All of a sudden, I start doing this stuff, and you're gonna start getting people around like, hey, who was that? Who was that? Who was that? And I'm gonna start saying names, and I'll tell them when they're playing. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're gonna have bigger crowds around these smaller bands because they're starting to see them come out and just hang out and be more of that personal style. But then again, I also got to make sure I'm like, well, I want to make sure that they want to come out here, have like feel comfortable with it. So again, have the Winnebago idea. So it's like if we're doing a little interview, can kind of just like have our little own enclosed space. However, also have that thing packed with water, Gatorade, soda. And then if you guys want to have a drink, beer, some liquor as well, because I'm just going to make it available for everybody. I know not everyone drinks, but if you want to, I'm definitely going to give you that option.
Yeah, and like ultimately at the end of the day, no matter how we want to look at it, like you're doing something that you love, but it's like, bro, we're all human. We're all consumers of music. We all want to discover and just vibe with people and like hear artists that we love. And like, bro, super fan over here. When this conversation's over, I'm gonna make a big old list of stuff, and just in the off chance we're nearby your neck of the woods, we'll come out.
I'll say right by the off chance I'm near your neck of the woods, because I mean, hell, you never know, especially with anytime anything comes out. I could end up just randomly all of a sudden Miami, Florida one day, and all of a sudden see you guys are playing a show and just be like, hey, Chris, I'm randomly in Miami. I'll see you tonight. Wait, are we playing a show tonight? Yes, you are, and I'm gonna be there. Like, that shit'll happen, because even taking a list, like, again, I'm going to jump a little bit more into your music as well, so that everyone listening to this can get a little bit more of a flavor of it as well. And I know, like, your biggest song right now, especially on Spotify, is Over It, and it definitely makes sense why, because especially listening to it, yeah, that classic, like, real pop punk feel, just the bass construction around it, and really the power that comes off of that style is really present in this track.
Yeah, and the funny part is that song had been written for some time, or it was like partially written, because Felix, if you checked out our music videos, he's the guy with a long ass beard, gracious, beautiful looking Viking. He and I do a lot of the meat and bones of like the lyric writing, and we wrote the lyrics of that song. I want to say like 2017-ish. Like, the only proof of that song ever existing is a video that's maybe like 240p sitting in an abandoned Facebook group that we like used to like all the former members used to like network through. But yeah, after we got signed, we knew we had such a great backlog of just like music in our catalog that, obviously we want our consumers to hear our new stuff, but now we have this blessing, this luxury that we have a bigger outlet to start pushing our music to. It's no longer going to be Carlos in Miami, Florida listening to it. It's going to be, it's going to be Kevin in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's going to be Sally in North Dakota. It's like, so I felt like we still are sitting on so many gems that we released in the past that we want to put out again. But, we wrote a whole new different composition for Over It, but we like saw that like this set of lyrics is still so like relevant in any degree, and bro, we're all over 2020. Hell, even though that the story of that song is just more like being over a really toxic relationship, but take it however you will. It just goes to show that, like, to all the artists listening out there, like, if you have an idea that's been shelved, revisit it, because you never know what it can turn into.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even listening to like different other podcasts as well. Listen, like, I'll bring up Joe Rogan as an example. Somebody was talking to Bill Burr about different comedy stylings, and just like, okay, when he gets an idea, it's like there are times where all of a sudden he'll get an idea at like 1 a.m, and he'll wake up and he'll grab his phone, hit open up voice memos and just start recording his idea, because when he falls asleep and wakes back up, he might be like, oh shit, I completely forgot what the idea was. And then he can listen to it, revisit it, and be like, okay, was this good? Was it bad? Maybe should I shelve this for later? Who the hell knows? But the fact of the matter is if you have something that you've been sitting on for a while, definitely give it another look, give it another visit, because if something you've been sitting on and shelved for maybe 5-6 years, maybe the experiences that you had in life with what you're trying to portray in that song, with the lyrical content and with the instrumental composition to really bring out that emotion properly, maybe you have a different outlook on it, and that different outlook will end up creating a song that has a lot more volume and really gives you what you want in it. So when you release it, it can potentially be your biggest hit up to that point. It's never a bad idea to revisit something, because with a different frame of mind, you might see it in a completely different light, and it might be the thing that really takes your band to the next level. You never know. But the only way that's never going to be able to happen is if you don't give it a shot.
Yeah, and like I can say, like, bro, I have notepads or like notes on my phone of just old shelf lyrics. I feel like they'll never see the light of day. Like every artist, we'll second guess ourselves. We're like, oh crap, is that too tacky? Is that too corny? And like sometimes you just gotta go with your gut, because at the end of the day, it's like, everyone has their own ear of what they like to hear and what they think they can make, come out of it. And there's no really such thing as a bad idea. Well, Control Z. There's so take that with a grain of salt. There's no such thing as a permanently bad idea, I guess. I don't know. Revisit old ideas.
Yeah, I was gonna say, definitely we can Control Z that one. I mean, definitely calling out like that perfect way to call it out as well. But also when it comes to Over It, because trying to look at the lyrics as well, I always like to try and figure out the where the meaning of songs come from and how you presented it. Like, I was looking at my little note sheet because I had written down. That's why I'm looking over here, because I wrote down the whole thing on like a 3-page Microsoft Excel document. I had meanings about that point at the end of a relationship where you're broken up and you realize that you no longer wish you had that person back in your life, that you're completely over it. And you're like trying to keep them from trying to come back. So again, trying to keep that toxicity from our city out of there.
No, 100%, man. And like, it's even though like I wrote those lyrics when I was like 19 or 20, like at the end of the day, like everyone's experienced a toxic relationship. It might not even be with a significant other. It might just be with a friendship. And like a big chunk of the lyrics, the song itself is more like this coming of age thing. This a big epiphany of like, no, I don't need to deal with this. I don't have to tolerate this. Like, I'm my own person. I have my own self-worth. And like that's never gonna age. Even though I was a little angstier when I wrote it, it's still a universal thing. Don't let people tread on you, man.
Yeah, no matter what, you're definitely gonna go through that at least one point in life, and it doesn't matter if it's like a significant relationship or like some sort of like, you know, boyfriend girlfriend, girlfriend, whatever it might be. However, there could be a time where it's just like you had a friend or something that was just very toxic to have around, and you kept having him around for so long for some random reason. It could be anything, because I've gone through this personally before as well. And then it's like there's come a point in time where you're like, you know, this just is not worth it for me. And you push on like, okay, I'm completely over this. So you kind of just cut that toxic person out from your life. So because I've experienced that before as well. And I've had that person try and come back, and I kept thinking, should I bring him back in my life? And I kept thinking, you know what? If I do, then the ceiling of my potential in life goes way down. So
exactly.
No. You can stay way far away from me.
Yeah, man. And a lot of it too is just like being able to show yourself that like self-love and that like self-respect to, you know, to know that you want better, you know, like everyone needs to have standards, and everyone, you know, needs to know what are they willing to deal with. And like, you know, in every relationship, it's a two-way street. You know, you gotta put in what you put out, and just like, you can only take so much. And I felt like, you know, in my younger days, like I had this like innate desire, oh, you know, you want to be like impressionable, and you want everyone to love you and crap. It's like, is that really like a healthy mindset? You know, like who am I out here like trying to impress, and like what am I really willing to take on? You know, like that no amount of BS is worth it. You know, I'm over it.
Dude, if I was in like high school or college at this point doing this podcast, I would have been like, well, I just want to please everyone. I just want to make everyone happy. Why doesn't everyone just want to be happy, kind of thing? But now that I'm 26, I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. You're just speaking my language right now, man. Because a lot of stuff that you just talked about, a lot of stuff that Overt really dives deep into, I've gone through, I've definitely experienced. So having a connection with that song as well definitely adds to it, especially if you went through something like that or had the emotional going, like that, the emotional equivalent of going through something like that. So it definitely makes sense. However, because so many people have gone through that, and so many people are going to end up going through that in their lives at some point, it does have that very relatable quality. Even if you wrote the lyrics back at like 19 or 20, again, people have gone through that at that age, sometimes even earlier, sometimes later. However, just that little bit of angst that you brought into that as well will always end up resonating, because there's a definite angst that comes along with it when you're in that toxic relationship, whether it's just a friend relationship, an intimate relationship, whatever it might be, that you got to cut out. There's definitely going to be some angst and anxiety that builds up, and to get rid of that angst is going to come out, and all of a sudden, boom, now it's over. You're over it, baby.
Yeah, and what I love about it is like, I still like in my songwriting that like teenage angst may come out sometimes, but like now that we've been together, like this band's formed, we've been together going on like 4 years now. We have this like evolved sound where it's like, yeah, we get to still whine, but it's like we're whining like adults. We're not whining like a teeny bopper.
Oh, definitely. And I think a lot of that also, especially with this song, the instrumental construction that you had on this really spoke to that, because it wasn't something that was, especially if you're kind of like had that angsty teeny bopper kind of pop punk sound. That's what I've seen is kind of the instrumental construction. It definitely has more of a simplistic quality to it. Don't get me wrong, that's not a bad idea to have a simplistic quality to it. But sometimes, especially as you get older, you know, different complex emotions come up within these certain topics. Different instrumental compositions, different buildings of songs are definitely going to have happen. And I think you guys really hit on that perfectly, especially because I'm taking a look at my notes again and how I did this. Again, look at them so I don't fuck this up. That's always the biggest thing. I like the intro. You kind of had that higher pop punk, faster pace oriented style. It reminded me of like a mix between like Blink-182 and Good Charlotte rolled into one, and I like it because it really drove that more energetic sound. However, when you get to the verse, like all of a sudden you start the first verse, the instrumentals go down much more minimalistic, which seems like an acoustic guitar, honestly, but it keeps the pace. Then you transition more into simplistic drum style that includes a heavier pop punk guitar, again, keeping the pace. But what I like about this is then you quickly divert to like this fuller pop punk sound, but you don't sacrifice that pacing at all. So it's a good move because you maintain the overall vibe with that changing instrumental, but you don't make it seem like this is completely like two separate things. You flow into them very nicely by keeping that pace up. And especially more of like, like that teeny bopper kind of pop punk sound, you might necessarily not necessarily have that. I mean, it might just be something that's a little bit more straightforward and constructed. So kind of having that more evolved sound to it to build up to the emotion that you're really trying to get to with Over It, man, that worked out really well.
Thank you, man. Honestly, I'm really flattered to hear that, because I do feel like there is like a very fine line of like when it comes to writing. I will call a little bit more minimalistic. I'm sure you know about like the punk rock MBA like on YouTube.
Oh, of course.
All right, so I'm trying to remember his name for the life of me, but there was an episode that talked about like butt rock, right? Like the Seethers, the Disturbs, the 3 Days Grace. And it was broken down like really straightforward. Like the reason why people enjoy that music is because it's like it delivers the energy at just the right times. You might not be playing in all these intricate time signatures, and you might not be shredding like crazy, but it's like it's hard to write a good structured like pop song. Like I feel like people will say, oh, you're selling out, or you're trying to cater to a certain audience. I'm like, listen, man, I want to see you try to write a song where you can keep the flow going and it doesn't sound like you're playing in a 5th grade talent show.
Yeah, I did watch that butt rock one because I'm seeing like that name that he had put up there. I'm like, I like all these bands. And like he had like Shinedown up there, 3 Days Grace. He had Skillet up there, Papa Roach. I'm like, I like all these guys. Come on, give me a break. But he did break it down really well to the point where he never really, like, when he talked about butt rock, he never ratted on it. He never said this, like, he said it to himself. He's like, okay, this isn't like my favorite kind of style. Okay, you're putting your opinion out there. Totally fine. I get it, Finn. But when he put it out there, just saying why, he's trying to figure out why people really get into this. And it's somewhere there's a lot of people that don't really want that really complex kind of sound. Are there some complexity in music that people really do like? Absolutely. However, even for myself, when it comes to something that's like super duper complex and really intricately done, and like with all these different, done different signatures, like the different variation, like a genty style, sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what the hell is going on. It's a really like that energy is just really mismatched for me. So I'm going to kind of push against it in terms of, I'm not going to completely bash it, but I'm probably not going to listen to it going forward. However, it is really, like, I know for people, it's really hard to write that kind of like simplistic style that just hits the energy at the exact same moment. Again, bands like 3 Days Grace, Shinedown, Skillet, Papa Roach are absolutely masters at this.
Exactly. And he touched up where it's like, hell, like some of these bands haven't put out, like they've made or break themselves with like 3 or 4 like really great singles, and now they're the ones that are still charting on Octane Radio 15 years down the road. Like how Breaking Benjamin is still one of like my top bands of like all time, bro. I'm sure you played Halo, like Blow Me Away was on the soundtrack. That was my introduction to them. Yeah, man, there is you just gotta know how you're delivering the songs. And like I feel like even now, 4 years into this project, I'm only now just starting to see, okay, fine, the song's moving in this direction. Like, are we going to add a clean break? Are the drums going to go in double time? Or going to got? Like, you start to analyze these things more. And, being in a studio and hearing our content now being produced at the level it is, and like knowing that there's such a standard to be like held, like these are the little intricacies that you really start thinking about going into it. And like, I'm a student of this entire thing, man. Like I went to school, I studied music business. I learned how to negotiate record contracts and, know where money comes from and crap. But like, it doesn't really hit you until you're sitting there and you're trying to realize, like, think like, okay, how am I delivering the lyrical message of this song and still keeping it in touch with where the instrumentals are? Like, it's such a fun process. And, since we are formally now just 3 songs in with our label, I feel like there's like this big wild west of like a big frontier of us to start exploring and seeing what people are going to like. And that's why I'm so excited to release some of our backlogged or old catalog music, because I feel like it has some of those content, those characteristics. So for the public to find out as we're dropping.
No, man. Well, I'm definitely going to be keeping tabs on that because I kind of want to see where the hell this all goes. But one definite thing I do want to say to that is one thing I've always looked at and talked to bands about when it comes to like creating music that really does stand out, it always seems like, okay, you're not trying to force anything in there. It's always coming naturally. So when you have like an idea, okay, you start out with a riff, all of a sudden, okay, I want to work off that riff. And you're kind of seeing where that riff is going, what that riff is kind of telling you, where you're feeling it coming from emotionally. Okay, then you're going to start building off of that, and you're going to let it happen naturally. You're not going to try and force something in there. But also, what at times, like, okay, maybe a clean break would work here. Maybe all of a sudden, you're going to go something a little bit more melodic at this point. Maybe, like, if you're metalcore, it's like, okay, where do we put the breakdown in this? And how hard do we go?
When's that China coming in?
Pretty much it. When's the come in? But the fact of the matter is you kind of feel it out. You feel the song. It's like, okay, where does this come in? Where does this necessarily hit the best in terms of where we feel it hits the best? And when you do that and then you listen to it, maybe it's not the best place for it, but you just gotta feel it out and really understand where it's coming from, understand where the emotion is coming from, and basically taking the listener on that journey within that song, along with having them go through their own set of emotions while listening to it. Yes, it can be something that's more of like that. I'll use the butt rock sound again, use Skillet as an example, where at times where all of a sudden you're listening, it's like, okay, definitely more of a motivational kind of song, but you listen to that motivational sense and oh my God, I mean, listen to the gym, listen to a song like Feel Invincible or Not Gonna Die in the Gym. My God, you're ready to go. Do I do that? Yeah, I absolutely do that. However, today when I was lifting, I stuck with more of what I've been listening to while doing Upper Body Day with Hollywood Undead. Kind of just the cockier, but like heavier, like darker sound at times. It's been treating me really well. But it's just something where people just kind of connect with music in that way. And when you really take them on an emotional story and just kind of tell your emotions through that story, through the music, and people will connect with that through that same emotion, but through a completely different like experience, but the emotion's the same. Man, that's where you have the connection. That's where these strong songs really come from. And that's where people really take a look, and you see bands like Shinedown that still chart on Octane 15, 20 years later.
Yeah, man. And like part of me thinks too, it's like, I want to put myself into the shoes of like 12 or 13-year-old me when I'm writing these songs. I want to think about like, who's going to be that kid in the classroom with the jacket, with the drawstring that had like the built-in earbuds right there, just kind of like in the corner trying to not get caught listening to music. Like, bro, I was a private school kid. So like you walk out any sort of technology and it's like, boom, demerit, like you're getting written up. But I want to put myself in the shoes of young Chris again and think like, man, like I want that listener to just feel the excitement, and it doesn't matter how intricate or basic the song is. I want it to hit home. Like, at the end of the day, I've always, music has been my catharsis. Like it's been my release, and I get over stuff through writing music. Like lyrically, like if something's wrong with me, like I'm gonna word vomit onto a notepad, and that's when Felix comes in and he's fixing all the grammatical errors and we're coming up with other rhyme schemes and stuff. But like I want to invoke that, like that feeling of just, hey man, you're gonna be okay, you're gonna have fun. Like I want my listeners to take that in. Like I'm not sitting here writing about fake things that don't even pertain to me. Like you can sit down and tell me to write a song about going to the club and partying and like I sound like such a boomer right now, but like I want to write shit that's relatable, man. And like if I can convey that with just high energy music with the group of guys that I'm blessed to call my bandmates, like they might as well be brothers at this point. Like it's a journey that, albeit we've been going at it for 4 years, but like we climbed all the way to the top of our ladder doing it DIY, and this is a whole new opportunity that we're being presented. And like if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when a door opens up and an opportunity presents itself, like do your research, but hey, go into it. Like, and there's going to be plenty of artists out there that are going to want to try and make it, but some of them don't have the luxury of maybe having a resource for distribution or a budget for doing videos or whatever it is they're lacking. So like I said, man, I'm a student to all of this, and I'm not letting any of it get to my head. I want to learn all about this because I want the next release to one up the one before it, and I know all the other guys in this band have that same mindset.
if you keep that mindset and you keep that enthusiasm about it, I mean, top tier is going to end up going very far places with that, because you're going to be looking for that next idea, that next thing that you know you could potentially learn. Maybe all of a sudden take a look at that. You're going to discover a trend that's happening where it's like, okay, this is starting to take off here, but in more like this rock, hard rock, pop punk kind of style music, it's nowhere near here. So what if we started jumping on this, especially if you relate necessarily to that trend, jump on it, put something in your music with it, and put it out there. All of a sudden, you guys could be like that next band where it's like, oh, this band really started off this like next like 2-3 year revolution, kind of like Crabcore with Attack Attack, or what we've been seeing in metalcore in the past couple of years after Architects released Holy Hell. Because again, I'm going to go Finn McKenty with the Architects core sound. I've definitely seen a lot more of that since like Holy Hell. I've seen a lot more of that from the past year and a half. So it definitely is something where you kind of just capitalize on maybe a trend, something happened different, like in a different genre, and just bring it to the forefront. If you definitely relate to it, also really creating something that you relate to, it will always end up being successful more than if you're going to be writing like going to the club, popping bottles, having hoes in different area codes, bringing up the ludicrous right there.
Yeah, like I want to be able to talk about my music confidently, you know? Like I can write about all the hot chicks, but were they really there? Were they really dancing next to me? No. Like, was I really drinking that $1,000 bottle of champagne? No, I'm probably like enjoying my honey jack and maybe a Four Loko or something. I don't know.
I was gonna say, because even when you're brought up that whole entire like kind of like high school kind of thing where it's like you had the kid with the sweatshirt that had the earbuds and the drawstrings and try not to get caught with any kind of electronics, especially if you went to a private school. I went to a private school as well, so I definitely understand it as well. And when it came to music in that private, and like being in a private school, everyone kind of fell in line with whatever was popular around that time. And for myself, it was, I mean, when I first started high school, I became good friends with this one kid, and him and I were on completely different wavelengths than anything else. Except he was a huge Slipknot fan. I love Disturbed. That was it. Like, that was enough to start us being friends. And then as time went on, it's like, yeah, people are still listening, whatever's popular at the time. Hell, I don't even remember what it was, because I was just like, all right, I'm listening to Disturbed, 3 Days Grace. I'm listening to Rise Against as much as possible. But it's just, if I was like to write music myself too, I kind of would, like, if I was talking about different experiences, I want to try and connect with myself at different points in life, like you said. Like, I want to, like, if I'm trying to connect with myself in middle school, okay, what was I thinking about middle school? What was I feeling? What were the emotions I was going through? And what kind of, like, if I was trying to write a song about that, how am I going to connect to the emotion that I'm having now and different aspects I'm having now in life and different experiences to what I was going through when I was like 12, 13, kind of match that emotion, though the experience can be different. Same thing in high school, college, when I went through this massive amount of depression in 2017, or just being happy in 2019. I mean, it could be a definitely massive array. However, if you're able to do that, you're going to end up connecting with people that are going through that same thing that you went through emotionally at that time. It's going to be an incredible connection that you make. And even if people didn't go through or in that time frame, but they went through something like that, they're going to connect to it as well. You're really giving yourself a huge base to work off of in terms of growing the fan base with that mindset.
1,000%, man. And you know, it's I just feel like honesty and transparency. Like I don't want to sit here and sit on my pedestal of virtues, but I just feel like honestly, in an industry where there's a lot of fakeness and there's just a lot of very sketchy things going on, like I just feel like if you can create a sound, you can do it right, people enjoy, and you can still stay honest to yourself and feel like you are writing something that you are proud of and you want your listeners to listen to as well. Like, you know, that's just what instills confidence. You know, I feel like with every release, I as an artist have been just like becoming more confident in what we put out, because I'll be honest, when this band first formed, like Top Tier is like my first band, if we call it that. Like, my experience prior to that was just like jamming with friends in the garage, or like, you know, my private school was a Christian school. Like, I was in a praise band for an after school thing just to get like my community service hours in. So like, you know, this is like my first experience really doing music, and to see what it's evolved into, and to see how like we all still stayed true to what we believe in, and to see that manifest itself into this new opportunity that we're at now, that I feel like is the forefront of something much bigger than, you know, like I just want that drive and enthusiasm to never burn out. And I feel like I'm not going to lose that. And, you know, I'm not even saying this because we're on a podcast. Every day I wake up and I think like, damn, okay, this is my chance to do something with what I love doing the most. And, like I'm going to take it one day at a time, and whatever comes out of it, comes out of it. But, we're going to meet hella people along the way, or we're going to be doing interviews and doing podcasts and connecting people. And it's just like this sense of community is what just excites me the most. And even though we're in a pandemic and we may not be able to, be with your best friends at shows, like we still have this luxury that is the internet, that, we're delivering content however we can. And, and artists are getting very creative with it. So, we got to make do with what we have now. But when shows come back, it's like you mentioned earlier, there's going to be so many bands that are going to be thrown on so many bills. And, when it happens, man.
I'm just going to be happy when it's like the family comes back together again. That's pretty much the thing I'm looking forward to the most, because the bands are going to be back on stage. The fans are going to be back there in the pit, and we're going to be all going crazy, but we're all going to be connecting on that positive emotional level, because you guys miss playing your music in front of us and connecting with us. We miss going absolutely crazy connecting with you guys on stage by just, jamming out in the crowd, or, potentially getting flipped in the pit, cutting your eye open, having to watch the rest of the show with one eye because you have a bunch of paper towels stuffed in front of your one eye and have a piece of someone's flannel shirt tied around to make yourself look like a pirate. That happened at that Motionless in White after the burial show for me. So, so that actually did happen. I saw
those are the stories that you get to tell out of it. Those are the memories you're creating, like it's, for some people, like their sense of fun is shows, they don't go out and spend money on big lavish things, or they don't, go out and blow money on stuff. Like they're fun, their sense of being it is in that community, and I know so many people here in this music scene that just their character changed so much. They've come out of these bouts of depression and like become whole new people. I feel like, me personally, I was 4 or 5 years ago, I feel like I was still a relatively shy person. Granted, I work retail and I get to talk with people on a daily basis, but I didn't really get to break out of my shell and like know I have a voice in a community. It wasn't until we started performing, and that's how Top Tier connected with with the local acts we played with down here, and that's how we were able to form what we had then. And I sure hell pray whenever this stuff comes back to normal, that community, albeit people might be scattered, that love and desire for music is still there. The venues may not all be there, but the fans still never left.
Yeah, that love and desire will definitely be there as well, because even what you said, kind of just, this is the thing that you connect with the most. I mean, hell, when I was going through that massive bout of depression, I mean, it was one of the biggest things that happened was that I didn't want to listen to Rise Against anymore. I didn't want to listen to the Wolves album because it came out right as everything was happening, so I didn't have any of those like extra emotions attached to it. And I'm like, my whole
the album that had Help Is on the Way, right?
No, Wolves had Help Is on the Way was on Endgame. Wolves had House on Fire, The Violence, Far From Perfect. Yes. Miracle. Okay. Miracle is just a fucking great song. That one's so underrated. But what ended up happening was like I didn't want to listen to them anymore, because outside of that album, just because I had so many other emotions attached to those songs from previous ones that I absolutely love, but now there are more negative emotions in my head. And my thought process, I gotta go see them live, and I gotta like take back my favorite band. And I still call that, like, still look back at that show, I'm like, that is the most impactful show I was ever at. And the reason was because I could not get my mind off of all this depression, off everything that was happening to me. For an hour and a half, none of that mattered. And I was just happy again. And when I got thrown in that pit the first time, I'm like, oh man, it was something where it's like, and that's why I love going to live shows, just because it's that sense of family, that sense of community, that sense of just sheer happiness that you feel there. So when live shows do come back, I mean, holy shit. Like I said, I want to get the family back together, because I don't, like, some people, I have no idea what their names are. I have no idea anything about them except for the fact that I see them at almost every single show. And when we're in the pit, we get thrown around together. Hell, I end up breaking my face a couple of times, but everyone's having a blast. And everyone, like, when I came back with the pirate looking eye, everyone's like, oh shit, he's back. I should have I'll put it this way. I should have definitely gotten stitches for that one, but I was not missing Motionless in White.
The medics can take care of that later. You got 2 eyes. You can afford one.
Well, luckily the cut wasn't on. I was like just above it, like it barely missed. So I'm like, okay, I got this. I'm just like, okay, I'm seeing. I got this. We're good. I'll put it this way. I did not jump back in the pit for that during Motionless in White, because it was, again, the cut was pretty deep. I didn't want, and I think it just got to stop bleeding right when they went on stage. I didn't want to just get back in there and start bleeding over everybody on accident. So I did the next best thing. I was on the edge pushing everyone around.
Oh, yeah. You do your part. Nah, bro, I miss that so much. I miss even just like the small talk of like the merch table afterwards and just like, meeting people I've never met before. They'll say, hey, I just pitted to that song. I just hurt myself. And I'm like, oh, are you okay? Like I'm out here like looking at my cooler, trying to pull out an ice pack or something because I'm so maternal at heart. Like you can ask any of my coworkers. If you get like a little boo-boo, I'm out here with the Neosporin and the bandages. And I'm like, oh, dude, you okay? And he's like, yeah, I had the fucking time of my life. Like sell me a t-shirt. Like, let me tell me about your band. And, I miss connecting with strangers like that, man. Like that was half the fun, of knowing that, hey, like I impacted your life and I made you have fun for a small time, albeit however long it was. But shit, that's meaningful to me, man. Like, I like to know that you had a good time. Like, I'm at my best when I know the crowd and they're giving me their energy is at their best.
That's when the shows are the best, when all of a sudden the crowd is super energetic. They're giving you energy as a band. All of a sudden, you're going to amp up your energy. You're going to give it back to us. And we're just basically, it's like a crocodile feeding frenzy at that point, where all of a sudden we're just feeding off each other's energy. And next thing you know, bodies are flying everywhere. People are going crazy. Some people might be getting hurt, but in the end, everyone's just having an absolute blast. Everyone's just having fun. That's really what matters in the end.
Yeah, man. I still have this vivid image in my head of all the people I can remember that crowd surfed in some of our gigs. Like the first time I saw someone crowd surf during one of our sets, I'm like, holy crap, is this real? Are you literally like this close to my face screaming my lyrics back at me? Like, I barely know you, dude. Like, that's just so gratifying, and like, we can sit here all day and talk about how we're going to feel when shows come back, but damn it, when shows return, like the world's going to be at peace.
Honestly, when it comes to this podcast, I think that's a perfect thing to kind of close out is when live shows come back, the will be at peace.
Yes.
So now
I can save the world.
Oh God, yeah. And say as we bring this to a close, because now I'm definitely looking at the time frame at around that hour and a half mark, and I know with just the time frame of these, hour and a half is a good time. I would say this for part one because I definitely want to have you back on the podcast at some point. This was fucking awesome.
I'd love to, man. We'll get Felix on here next time too. We'll talk music, and bro, I want to party with you, man. The second I am in your neck of the woods, like I just met your ass, and I want to just throw down with you, man.
Oh, it'll definitely happen, and if you're at Riot Fest as well, and hell, I'll put you on my shoulders. We'll watch it. We'll watch a show that way. I mean, my shoulders might end up hurting after a couple songs, but you know what? I'll put you down. We'll just go in the pit. We'll go nuts.
Hell yeah, man! Honestly, bro, thank you for having me here. And
you bring the Cuban coffee. I'll bring the beer, or I'll buy the $10 beers, whatever it might be at that point, or 15.
Man.
So, Chris, before we send you on your merry way for this time, because I definitely want to have you back on the podcast at some point, I would like to give you the chance to have a chance to say whatever the heck you want to plug in terms of whatever you want to say. So the floor is officially now yours for a little bit, I guess.
All right, guys. Well, to whoever is listening, you can find us on all social media platforms. It's Top Tier FL, TOP space TIERFL. We're on Vivo. We are on every social or music streaming platform. We have 3 releases right now through our label Apocalypse Records. Our most recent one being Over It. And we want to get your feedback. I'll be the first one to respond to the direct messages. I want to meet people, like we're in our little neck of the woods right now in Miami, in this geographic corner of the world. But I want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to discover your music, trade tunes, just, slide in our DMs. We're going to have some fun. But that's it for me, Kevin. Thank you for having me. And we will be back.
Oh, absolutely. So as I close this out, 3 things. One is for everything that Chris has just said, where you can find them, I'm going to make it even easier for you guys, like I always do, because I know convenience is key. So take a look at the description of this podcast. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeart Radio, and you're going to see a thing that says Find Top Tier online, and you're just going to see the labels for their socials, YouTube, where you can stream their stuff, where you can find them online, anything I can find on them, and you're going to see the links right there. It's going to be a click, tap, and go kind of thing. So follow these guys, like them, share their stuff, listen to their stuff. It's all going to be there, even streaming on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere else I can find it. Second thing is, Chris, I do not want this to be the only time you're on the podcast. Love to have you on again. And we'll even get even some of the other guys in the band as well. Specifically Felix. I want to see that giant beard on the podcast. And when it comes down to it, in the end, I cannot end this podcast in good conscience by saying goodbye for a number of reasons. One, I never like to do that because that kind of signifies like, oh, it's the end. And that is definitely not the case on this one. Two, hell yeah, I definitely want to have some fun times. We party with you, go see some shows with you, go see you guys play live as well. And when that happens, I mean, I already said that I was going to end up, you bring the Cuban coffee, I'll bring the beer. Hell, if you don't bring the Cuban coffee, I'll still buy the beer. So hell, first round's on me. You're part of that club that I always have. So whenever I see you guys first, you, Felix, whoever else it might be, first round's on me, guys. And
Hell yeah.
So on that note, this cannot end in a goodbye. At all. Hell no. We're going to end this with my favorite thing in the world when I end it, this stuff. See you later, man.
Adios, bro. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on, man. Well, folks, I'm interviewing with Chris from the band Top Tier, and please follow along with Top Tier. All their links for their socials, their music, where you can stream them is in the description of the podcast, and I want you to do this because, my God, Chris was so much fun to have in the podcast. I can't wait to have him back on again, along with Felix as well. And my God, this band is going to be something that you're really going to want to watch. They're definitely going to be at that forefront of the next great wave of pop punk, along with bands like Belmont out of Chicago. And I cannot wait to see these guys live. I cannot wait to meet these guys. And I cannot wait to have that, experience at Riot Fest or wherever we might be, where I get to hang out with Chris and we get to go in the mosh pit and just go absolutely bonkers. But hopefully that's in 2021 when live shows return. Let's hope. So on that note, that's going to be for me today, guys. Thank you for watching and listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. Pretend most of you rocks where rock and metal thrive. My name is Kevin, and you guys know how I end every single one of them with the big, healthy, and hearty. See ya! Yeah!